In last week's YouTube video, I talked all about the power of starting small and why small, minimal practices are the key to getting more done as a creative person and just the key to actually advancing towards your overall vision. But I want to make something clear. You are allowed to dream big. You are allowed to have a big, saucy, scary vision for your life. And the minimum viable practices that I talked about in last week's video are the key to allowing yourself to continue showing up for the process even when you experience disappointment and discouragement along the way. If you're new to my channel, my name is Ash. I am a coach and an astrologer, primarily working with neurodivergent queer people and women who are going through a season of rediscovering and remembering who they are. And I do this through supporting them to show up for the things that matter to them, which are creative hobbies, spiritual practices, their health and fitness and wellness goals, basically anything that they feel like they have lost touch from, or they've just never really gotten the hang of being consistent with. I help them to actually create the systems and the practices that support them in showing up for themselves in the long run. A lot of the people that I work with are coming out of a relationship and they're learning how to prioritize themselves and what they want out of life again. If this sounds like you and you're learning how to bridge the gap between where you are now and where you want to go, you feel like you're moving through a void experience or a liminal space in your life, then definitely stay tuned because I'm going to be talking about exactly that in this video. So one of the things that I have observed with my clients as a coach over the last few years is that there's one thing that tends to stop people over and over and over again from showing up for the things that matter to them, from showing up for the goals and the dreams that they have for their life, and that is disappointment. And one of the things that I have my clients do when they start working with me is create a general life vision. A general life vision is the big picture vision, the big, feels unattainable kinds of dreams and goals. And we actually go through in each category of your life and we create a visual and written vision for what you want to experience in that area of your life. And one of the things that sets this kind of vision apart from what I see other people doing and the way that other people approach vision boarding as a process is that the general life vision does not have a timeline on it. It doesn't have a deadline. It is the big picture that we are moving towards over the course of our life. And we're actually expecting this vision to take some time to arrive. And one of the things that I often hear from people when they start creating their general life vision is that they don't want to set themselves up for disappointment. And I totally understand this, but I also have to tell you that if you really think back to where does this come from? Where does this fear of being disappointed come from? And why is experiencing disappointment something that you feel like you need to avoid in the first place? Because disappointment is a normal part of life. It's a normal part of the human experience. And it is actually something that is just evidence that you are showing up for things in your life and that you are putting yourself out there and you're going after your dreams and your vision and your goals, because disappointment is part of how we learn and grow. Now, if you're anything like me and you are a sensitive, creative person, you might have had very well-meaning people in your life, parents, guardians, potentially teachers, and other kinds of folks who would try to prevent you from experiencing the hardships of disappointment because you were very sensitive and they were concerned you wouldn't be able to handle it. And part of how this ends up showing up in our lives is that we hold ourselves back from actually going after what we want because we learned that we don't have the capacity to handle the disappointment of not getting what we want. And you might even have experienced this where you did put yourself out there, you did go after what you wanted, and it didn't work out. And the emotional fallout of that was so intense and so extreme that it made you go into your shell. If you relate to this, I have been there. I have totally had this experience many times in my life, and I know how much this can feel like a block you just can't move through. But here's the good news. Building the capacity to hold space for emotions like disappointment and feeling discouraged is a learned skill. It's not something that you either have or you don't have. It's something that you maybe weren't taught because the people who were trying to prevent you from experiencing disappointment didn't know how to hold space for that emotion themselves. So if we don't want to focus on avoiding disappointment, and we know that we have this general big life vision that we want to move towards, what do we want to focus on instead? We want to focus on building the bank of energy that we are holding towards that vision. And the way that we do this is through repeated small actions towards becoming the person who has the capacity to hold that big vision. So what do I mean by this? One of the easiest examples that I can use to explain how this works is money. So let's say that you have in your big general life vision a dream of buying a specific car. And cars these days, even used cars, are usually around $20,000. And if you feel like you never have enough money, you aren't good at managing your money, you find yourself spending your money in ways that don't feel like they are going to allow you to ever get this vehicle that you want, then buying that car on your vision board feels impossible. And because it feels impossible, you might decide that you will just wait to receive this car, and you probably won't ever receive it, and it's not going to happen. And so there's no point in even setting aside any money for this car because all you would ever be able to set aside is maybe like $5 or $10 at a time. All right. So this is actually kind of where I was at just a few years ago, where I had this car that I really wanted to buy, and I was not making very much money. I wasn't making enough money. I was really struggling in business, and I was just trying to figure out how to like keep my head afloat. But I decided to have a bank account where I would start just setting aside what I had. And I'm talking about literally making deposits of $5, $13 over and over again. And maybe the first month I set aside $25 to $50 towards this car that costs thousands of dollars. If we're just thinking about the down payment, we're still thinking about like thousands of dollars, right? So why did that matter? Why did it matter that I decided to start setting aside small amounts of money towards my vision, even if I knew that it was going to take me a long time to ever be able to buy the car that I wanted with $65 every month or something like that? Because it put me in the identity of a person who saves money. I became embodied in the identity of a person who saves money towards her vision. I became embodied in the identity of a person who saves money towards buying her vehicle. And of course, I paired all of this with other techniques you might have heard of if you're familiar with other kinds of manifestation techniques, visualizing myself in the car. When I would see the car that I wanted out in the world, I would say, that's my car. So I was becoming more embodied in the identity of somebody who actually had the car that I wanted. But what I really want to focus on here is that those small deposits into that bank accumulated over time and created a bank of energy towards my vision. And this is the same thing that we are doing with our minimum viable practices. So let's say that I have a big vision of I want to be an artist, okay? But I am not drawing. I'm not doing any creative work, and I feel like it's so impossible to ever become an artist that I just decide that that's just a dream, that's just an idea in my mind, and it's not something that I can ever have, and it's not even really worth starting or worth pursuing. That then becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Just like if I never set aside money for the car that I want, that also becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy that I can never buy the car that I want, all right? So when we create a minimum viable practice, we are setting aside 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. We are doing something that feels really small and easy and simple to show up for. And if you watched my video about the illustrated journaling practice, this is a really good example of this. And then over time, all of those little sessions of showing up for my practice become a bank of energy that I have put towards my vision. And when you get to a certain point where you have banked energy, it actually collapses a timeline. And you will find that you've saved a certain amount of money, and then some sort of circumstance will happen where you receive some kind of match, energetic match to that energy that you have banked. Or you will have shown up for your minimum practice for a year, let's say, and then all of a sudden you'll realize that this skill that you thought you would never be able to do is now actually really easy for you, and it just kind of happened. And now you sold your first commission. You collapsed that timeline. So it seems like it's not worth it to the logical mind to show up for just the minimum. But it's actually in showing up for that minimum that we create that bank of energy that is necessary to be able to collapse the timeline and take us faster towards that big general life vision. If you find that these kinds of insights that I'm sharing every week on YouTube are helping you, they're helping you shift your perspective on what it means to be a creative person, what it means to be consistent, what it means to create a life that really allows you to express who you are, then I want to invite you to join Spiritual Being. Spiritual Being is a weekly program that I put on inside of a platform called School, where we do group coaching calls on Monday nights, and I give you direct feedback on the problems and the struggles that you're coming up against in showing up for your creative and spiritual practice and creating the lifestyle that you want. When you join Spiritual Being, you will be walked through the process of creating your general life vision, and I will also teach you a creative visioning framework that will completely change the way that you approach your goals and manifestations, and it's a lot of fun. And once you have your general life vision in place, you can come to or watch the weekly rituals that I create that help you stay in that creative momentum going towards what you are trying to manifest in your life. Plus, there's a supportive community of other creative, sensitive, neurodivergent weirdos to walk along the path with you. And I'm in the group every day, responding to comments and sharing resources like astrology worksheets to help you get to know yourself more deeply, and other kinds of somatic and nervous system tools to keep you supported through the emotional process of bringing your vision to life. I tend to work with people over the long haul, but if you just want to join for a month and check it out, that's available right now too. I can't say that that's always going to be a part of how I'm going to offer this program, but it is something that I am offering right now because I know that sometimes it can be like a little nerve-wracking to come into a group of people. You don't really know what to expect. You don't know how much you're going to get out of being in this container. So I want to give you the opportunity to just ease into it and show up for the minimum. So showing up for the minimum in this group would look like watching 1 to 2 of the rituals that I do every Wednesday, and they're posted in the group on Thursdays, and then also going through the process of creating your general life vision and learning how to do the creative visioning process. I'd anticipate for most people that's going to take a couple of months to actually go through it at a sustainable pace and actually getting some support to go through the process. So if you're interested in learning more about that, you can find that in the description below this video. Otherwise, thanks so much for being here, and I hope that you stick around on the channel and enjoy the ride with me this year here on YouTube.